The year is 1645. We find ourselves deep within the shadows of Mount Iwato on the island of Kyushu, Japan. Winter has descended upon these ancient peaks, and the air carries the sharp bite of approaching snow mingled with the scent of damp moss and cedar resin. Outside the Reagan cave, the wind moves through skeletal bamboo groves like the whispered conversations of ghosts, while inside, a single oil lamp flickers against limestone walls worn smooth by centuries of solitude. The flame dances nervously, casting shadows that stretch and contract like breathing. There is a silence here that weighs more than stone, not empty, but pregnant, with the accumulated stillness of a life lived in deliberate isolation. In this hollow sanctuary sits an old man, his body a map of 60 years of violence, yet his hand, holding a brush, remains steady as the mountain itself. He is dying, and he knows this with the same certainty that he once knew the precise moment to strike. The cold seeps into his bones, but he does not shiver. He writes. This is Miyamoto Musashi, the swordsman who never lost a duel, now alone with nothing but ink, paper, and the approaching abyss of eternity. He is composing his final testament, the Doct, the path of walking alone, 21 precepts, distilled from a lifetime of solitary wandering. You, who are lying there in the darkness of your own cave, scrolling through the endless void of digital noise at an ungodly hour, you understand this loneliness, don't you? The modern world has given you connection without intimacy, stimulation without satisfaction. Musashi chose his solitude, you inherited yours. But perhaps, in the disciplined emptiness of this dying samurai's final wisdom, there exists a map through your own internal wilderness. Let us sit with him in the flickering light and borrow his hard-won tranquility for the night ahead. Listen closely to the silence that surrounds you now. Can you hear it? It is not merely the absence of noise, but a presence unto itself, ancient, patient, and profound. The year is 1645, and we find ourselves deep within the Reagan cave on the island of Kyushu, where winter has descended with the inevitability of death itself. Outside these limestone walls, the world has turned monochrome. Bare branches scratch against a pewter sky, frost crystallizes on ancient stone, and somewhere in the distance, a mountain stream lies locked beneath ice. The air inside hovers just above freezing, cold enough that each breath becomes visible, a ghost departing the body only to dissolve into the darkness beyond the lamplight. Here sits Miyamoto Musashi, the swordsman who never lost a duel, now 61 years old and alone with his approaching mortality. His body has become a museum of violence, scars layered upon scars, bones that ache with the memory of impacts, joints that creak like old temple doors. His hair, once black as lacquered armor, has turned the color of ash scattered by wind. Yet observe his hand as it holds the brush above rice paper, it does not tremble. This steadiness was not born of peace, but forged through decades of deliberate control. The same control that kept him alive through 60 duels when a single tremor would have meant death. He dips his brush into the black ink, sumi, and brings it to the page with ceremonial precision. The Doct takes shape before him. 21 precepts distilled from a lifetime of voluntary exile. These are not the romantic philosophies of scholars who theorize about suffering from the safety of their libraries. These are survival instructions, written in the language of a man who chose solitude as his path to mastery, who recognized that the ordinary warmth of human connection was incompatible with the purity of his discipline. You understand this isolation, don't you? You who are lying there in your own cave of darkness, in a room that has become your sanctuary against the chaos of the modern world. Your cave has different walls, drywall instead of limestone, the hum of electronics instead of mountain silence. But the essential architecture is the same. You too have withdrawn from a world that demands constant performance, endless optimization, perpetual availability. The modern world has given you connection without intimacy, stimulation without satisfaction, relationships without the depth your soul craves. Your exile may not be as deliberate as Musashi's, but it is no less real. You are tired, not just in your body, but in your soul, exhausted from the performance of being you, from wearing the mask the world expects, from smiling when you are crumbling inside. Here, in the protective darkness of your room, you can finally stop performing. Your bed is not a prison of insomnia, but a fortress of solitude. Your blankets not chains, but shields against the world's relentless demands. Let the darkness around you become the darkness of the Reaganed cave. It is not an empty void, but a womb of silence, where shadows are not monsters, but guardians of your peace. In this space, there is no need to be successful, productive, or understood. There is only the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing, matching the deliberate stroke of the master's brush across ancient paper. The ink is drying. The struggle is ending. The day is done. You are safe in the stone fortress of your own solitude, where Musashi's hard-won tranquility can become your borrowed peace for the night ahead. Before there was the master of solitude, before the wisdom carved in stone, there was a child standing in the dust of a world that had forgotten tenderness. The year is 1596, and we find ourselves in a village square in Harima province, where the air hangs thick with the metallic scent of violence and the acrid smoke of a nation tearing itself apart. This is Japan during the Sengoku period, the age of warring states, where for over a century warlords have carved the country into bleeding territories, and children learn the weight of steel before they learn the comfort of unconditional love. In the center of this chaos stands a boy of 13, wild-haired and feral-eyed, gripping a wooden staff with hands that should still be soft with childhood. His name is Benasuke, the child who will become Musashi. Opposite him, a grown samurai named Arima Kihei sneers with the confidence of a man facing what he believes to be easy prey. What follows is not an elegant duel of honor, but a desperate explosion of survival instinct. The boy strikes again and again, until the movement stops and the dust settles around a corpse. At 13, he has taken his first life, standing victorious yet profoundly, irrevocably alone. This boy's father, Munisai, was a master of martial arts, but a stranger to the art of fatherhood. His mother remains a ghost in history, her name erased, her warmth absent so early that even Musashi's own writings contain no memory of her touch. Whether she died in childbirth or simply vanished into the fog of wartime chaos, the result was the same: a child abandoned to learn that survival depends on strength alone, that vulnerability is a luxury afforded only to those protected by others. You know this abandonment, don't you? Perhaps not in the literal sense, perhaps your parents were physically present. But there are many ways to be orphaned. Some of us are abandoned to our own anxious minds, left to navigate the labyrinth of worry without a guide. Some are orphaned by parents too wounded by their own trauma to offer the safety we needed. Some are abandoned to expectations we could never meet, to standards that left us feeling perpetually inadequate, perpetually under threat. The anxiety that keeps you awake tonight, it is not a disorder, but a survival mechanism forged in the same fires that shaped young Benasuke. When you are a child surrounded by emotional instability or the threat of abandonment, you develop what psychologists call hypervigilance. You learn to read every room like a battlefield, to detect the slightest shift in tone, the faintest furrow of disapproval. You became a soldier before you were ever allowed to be a civilian. This is why your mind races in the darkness, replaying conversations, rehearsing apologies for mistakes not yet made. You are still that child in the village square, gripping the staff, scanning for threats. The voice that criticizes you when you cannot sleep, that harsh inner instructor demanding perfection, was born from the same emptiness that shaped Musashi's early years. But listen closely. The duel is over. The sun has set on that dusty square. You are no longer that frightened child who had to earn their right to exist. You can put the staff down now. You can unclench your vigilant hands. The war you are fighting in your mind ended long ago, though your nervous system has forgotten to sign the peace treaty. Let us sign it tonight, in the safety of your sheets, where no enemy approaches and no battle awaits. You have survived every difficult day you have ever lived. You are enough. You can rest. The morning mist rises slowly from the blood-soaked fields of Sekigahara, revealing a landscape forever altered by the clash of armies. The year is 1600. And the greatest battle in Japanese history has concluded with the thunder of victory for the Tokugawa and the whispered agony of defeat for all who opposed them. Among the scattered survivors crawling from the carnage walks a young man of 16, his armor dented, his allegiances shattered. Musashi, still calling himself Benasuke, emerges not as a hero but as a ghost, stripped of lord, purpose and place in the rigid hierarchy that once defined his existence. In this moment of profound loss, something extraordinary occurs. Rather than seeking another master to serve, another banner to follow, Musashi makes a choice that will echo through centuries. He becomes Ronin, literally wave person, one who drifts masterless through the world. In feudal Japan, this was not romantic freedom, but social death. A Ronin existed in the liminal space between categories, belonging neither to the peasant class nor the noble houses, neither fully alive nor properly dead in the eyes of society. To be masterless meant to live without the psychological shelter that comes from serving something larger than oneself. No lord's approval to seek. No school's doctrine to follow. No predetermined path stretching toward a guaranteed destination. Musashi embraced this terrifying emptiness deliberately, understanding that true mastery could only emerge in the wilderness beyond all social scripts. He became a wave, learning to move with currents rather than against them, finding strength in fluidity rather than rigid structure. You know this feeling intimately, don't you? You who lie awake scrolling through carefully curated lives, watching others celebrate promotions and partnerships that feel galaxies away from your own experience. The modern world offers countless masters eager for your allegiance, corporate hierarchies promising meaning through productivity, social algorithms offering belonging through validation, consumer culture whispering that completion lies in the next purchase. Each demands conformity, each promises to fill the void, and each ultimately leaves you feeling more fragmented than whole. Your anxiety often stems from this masterless state. the vertigo of existing between predetermined categories. You see the tribes forming around you and recognize that you do not quite fit, not ambitious enough for the career climbers, not social enough for the effortlessly connected, not settled enough for those who seem to navigate life with such certainty. Perhaps you have tried to force yourself into these molds, performing the rituals of networking and small talk, only to return home feeling more isolated than before. But what if your inability to settle into these roles is not deficiency, but deeper integrity? What if the restlessness that keeps you awake is your soul's refusal to betray itself for the comfort of belonging? Musashi's wandering was not aimless, but purposeful. He was discovering who he actually was, beneath the layers of who he had been told to be. Tonight, as you lie in the darkness between sleep and waking, you are not lost. You are fluid. The anxiety you feel is simply the vertigo of freedom. Stop fighting the currents of uncertainty. The wave does not need a map to reach the ocean, it simply flows with the deeper rhythms of existence. Let your bed become a raft on gentle waters. Let the night be the vast ocean that cradles all wanderers. You are not drowning in uncertainty. You are floating in infinite potential. Drift now, wave person. Just drift. There exists a peculiar mathematics to invincibility, a cruel arithmetic that few who celebrate legends ever pause to calculate. 60 duels across 29 years. 60 opponents who approach with steel and certainty. 60 men who believe this encounter would be different. 60 times Miyamoto Musashi stood in temple courtyards, on narrow bridges, beneath cherry blossoms heavy with spring rain, and watched another warrior fall while he remained breathing. History records this as triumph. But numbers tell a different story. After 10 victories, people whisper your name. After 30, they fear approaching you. After 60, they cease seeing you as human altogether. Imagine carrying a reputation that grows heavier with each success, like armor that cannot be removed. Every morning brought the terrible knowledge that today could shatter everything. Not just a single defeat, but the complete annihilation of identity. Musashi did not simply fight other swordsmen. He battled the weight of his own legend. The crushing expectation that he must remain the man who never loses. Victory became a prison whose walls rose higher with each triumph, until he stood alone on an island of his own making, surrounded by a moat of corpses and separated from the ordinary comfort of human fallibility. His strategy reveals the psychology of someone who understood that perfection demands the elimination of all spontaneity. He arrived late to unsettle opponents, used wooden swords against steel to demonstrate superiority. Attacked minds before bodies. This was not confidence, but calculated terror. The methodical removal of every variable that might introduce uncertainty into an equation that could not afford a wrong answer. You know this burden intimately, don't you? You who lie there, replaying today's single stumbled word, while ignoring 99 moments of eloquence. You have built your own undefeated record, perhaps not with swords, but with deadlines met, expectations exceeded, crises managed with apparent effortlessness. You have become the reliable one, the competent one, the one who always has it together. And now you are trapped within that identity, terrified that a single crack in the facade will reveal the fraud you secretly fear yourself to be. This is the insomnia of the high achiever. Your mind scanning for errors, calculating tomorrow's risks, rehearsing apologies for mistakes not yet made. You lie awake because you are trying to be a god in a human body, maintaining divine standards with mortal limitations. The voice that criticizes your imperfections speaks with Musashi's unforgiving precision, confusing discipline with self-flagellation, confusing standards with the demand for impossible flawlessness. But here is what the legend obscures. Musashi's true mastery lay not in never losing, but in his eventual understanding that winning and losing are illusions of the ego. His later writings reveal profound indifference to victory for its own sake, recognizing that the battle itself, the discipline, the observation, the refinement of perception was sacred, not the outcome. The anxiety you carry is simply the exhaust of trying to control the uncontrollable, the weight of armor you no longer need to wear. Tonight, in the sanctuary of your sheets, you can lay down this burden. There are no scorecards here, no audiences judging your performance, no legend requiring maintenance. The duel of this day is already over, and you have survived it. Let your jaw unclench, your shoulders soften, your breath lengthen into the rhythm of ordinary humanity. You are not a record to be preserved, but a being in process, worthy of rest regardless of tomorrow's challenges. Even the undefeated samurai, in his final cave, chose peace over perfection. Close your eyes. The victory that matters most is simply allowing yourself to be human. In the flickering candlelight of his final cave, Musashi's brush moves across rice paper with the deliberate precision of a man who understands that words, like sword strokes, must be economical to be lethal. He is composing the path of walking alone, 21 precepts distilled from a lifetime of deliberate solitude. The first precept emerges like a blade through silk: do not seek pleasure for its own sake. 7 words that dismantle the entire architecture of human desire. 7 words that challenge everything you have been taught about happiness and the pursuit of satisfaction. To understand this teaching, we must see Musashi as he truly lived, not as a hermit fleeing the world, but as a man walking deliberately through it while refusing its seductions. Picture him on the roads of Edo, Japan, passing tea-houses glowing with lantern light, hearing laughter spill from inns where travelers share sake and stories. He moved through a world rich with available pleasures, art, companionship, comfort, romance, yet he walked past them all. Not from hatred of joy, but because he recognized a profound truth: pleasure sought as an escape from discomfort is merely another form of bondage. You know this bondage intimately, don't you? You who reach for your phone not because you need information, but because silence feels too loud. We live in an age of infinite distraction, where the slightest discomfort can be instantly medicated with a scroll, a click, a notification. Your nervous system has been trained to expect constant novelty, perpetual entertainment, unending stimulation. The algorithm knows your neural vulnerabilities better than you know them yourself, serving endless streams of content calibrated to trigger dopamine release while leaving you emptier than before. This is why you lie awake at 3 in the morning, not from lack of stimulation, but from its relentless excess. Modern neuroscience confirms what Musashi understood intuitively: the pursuit of pleasure for its own sake creates tolerance, demanding ever-increasing doses while delivering diminishing returns. After hours of scrolling, when the screen finally goes dark, do you feel nourished? Or do you feel hollowed out, starving for genuine sustenance despite gorging on digital sugar? Musashi's solitude was not loneliness, that ache of unwanted isolation, but raku, the profound satisfaction that arises naturally from engagement with life rather than escape from it. True pleasure emerges from alignment with purpose, from the dignity of existing without performance or pretense. It is the peace of a mind not fighting reality, the satisfaction of attention fully given, the deep rest that follows honest effort. Tonight, practice what the Master practiced, the art of being sufficient unto yourself. Put down the device that promises connection while delivering only comparison. Let the silence settle around you like snow falling on a temple garden. Notice how the absence of stimulation initially feels like suffocation. This is not need, but habit. The phantom limb of addiction twitching in darkness. Breathe into the emptiness. Let it expand rather than contract. Discover that you do not need to be entertained to be alive, stimulated to be worthy. There is profound dignity in simply existing, in being the gentle observer of your own quiet breath. This is the art of walking alone, finding that when you stop fleeing from yourself, you discover the very companionship you have been seeking. The path is solitary, yes, but never empty. The lamplight flickers against the limestone walls as Musashi's brush moves with deliberate precision across the rice paper. Each stroke carries the weight of decades spent learning reality's most unforgiving lessons. He writes the second precept of his doct in characters that seem to burn themselves into existence, mono goto ni oite kai sezu, literally, in all things, have no regrets, but carrying the deeper meaning of accepting everything just as it is. This is not the gentle philosophy of scholars debating in comfortable halls, but survival wisdom carved from the marrow of 60 life or death encounters. Consider what acceptance meant for a man whose existence depended on instantaneous response to lethal reality. When an opponent's blade descended toward his skull, Musashi could not pause to wish the attack were slower, the ground more level, or the circumstances more favorable. The swordsman who argues with reality, even for a heartbeat, becomes a corpse before the argument concludes. Survival demanded the immediate, total acceptance of what is rather than what should be. He learned to fight the opponent actually before him, not the one he preferred to face. He accepted rain as wet, stone as hard, death as present, and in that acceptance found the fluid responsiveness that kept him breathing. You understand this resistance intimately, don't you? You lie there in the protective darkness, waging war against circumstances that refuse to bend to your will. Your mind spins in endless loops of revision and protest. The career that should be further along. The relationship that ended despite your devotion. The body that carries anxiety like a stone in your chest. The past that should have unfolded differently. Each should is a small act of violence against what already exists, each if only a futile attempt to negotiate with the immutable. This mental resistance creates the friction that generates the heat of sleeplessness. You are like water trying to flow uphill, exhausting yourself against the fundamental laws of what has already occurred. Anxiety is not fear of the future, but refusal of the present, the desperate attempt to hold back the river of reality with bare hands. You have been taught that acceptance equals surrender, that to stop fighting means abandoning your agency and dignity. But Musashi discovered the profound distinction between accepting reality and accepting defeat. True acceptance is not passive resignation, but tactical genius applied to existence itself. Like water encountering stone, it does not argue or complain, but immediately adapts, flowing around obstacles with fluid intelligence. The mountain stream never becomes blocked because it never resists. It accepts gravity, terrain, and temperature as the unchangeable parameters within which it moves. In this acceptance, it becomes unstoppable, carving canyons through granite simply by refusing to fight what cannot be fought. Tonight, practice the warrior's acceptance. Feel your body against the mattress, accept its weight without judgment. Notice your breath, perhaps shallow and irregular, accept its rhythm without correction. The thoughts racing through your mind like storm clouds, greet them without resistance. You are here. That is what this moment contains. Watch how the energy you are spending in futile argument becomes available for rest. Surrender is not defeat, but alignment with the deeper currents of existence. Let reality be exactly what it is, and discover that peace lies not in changing the unchangeable, but in flowing with the eternal river that carries all things home. The cave grows deeper in its silence as Musashi's brush hovers above the rice paper, suspended like a blade before the decisive strike. Outside, winter wind moves through bare branches with the sound of whispered secrets, while inside the lamplight flickers against limestone walls worn smooth by centuries of solitude.
He inscribes the third precept with deliberate precision: do not under any circumstances depend on a partial feeling. These words carry the weight of 60 duels, each one a lesson in the fatal consequences of emotional attachment during moments when clarity means survival. In the brutal mathematics of sword combat, a partial feeling was any emotional fixation that clouded perception. The flash of anger that made you reckless, the spike of fear that made you hesitant, the surge of pride that made you blind to your opponent's true intention.
Musashi discovered that the warrior who becomes attached to victory has already introduced trembling into his technique. The desire itself creates the vulnerability, the need itself becomes the weakness. He learned to cultivate mushin, no mind, a state of consciousness like a polished mirror that reflects everything perfectly while holding on to nothing. This was not emotional numbness, but profound freedom. The ability to engage with total commitment while remaining paradoxically detached from outcomes. He could fight with complete intensity while maintaining indifference to whether he lived or died. In this detachment lay his invincibility, not because he didn't care, but because he cared so deeply that he transcended the need for specific results. You understand this attachment intimately, don't you? You lie there in the protective darkness, your nervous system hijacked by partial feelings. The anxiety about tomorrow's presentation, the ache of an unanswered message, the weight of expectations you cannot control. Your mind spins elaborate scenarios of triumph or disaster, treating these mental simulations as if they were occurring now, flooding your body with cortisol for battles that exist only in imagination. You have become emotionally invested in outcomes you were never meant to carry. This is the exhaustion of the modern soul, the relentless attempt to manipulate reality to sustain feelings that are by nature impermanent. You are trying to build a fortress on shifting sands, to make the temporary permanent, to control the fundamentally uncontrollable. The anxiety that keeps you awake is simply the strain of gripping too tightly to things that were meant to flow through your open hands like water. Modern psychology calls this experiential avoidance, the futile attempt to escape uncomfortable internal experiences by controlling external circumstances. But Musashi understood what neuroscience now confirms. Peace comes not from successfully managing outcomes, but from releasing the need to manage them. Like shooting an arrow, you aim with precision, draw with strength, release with perfect form, and then, the moment the string snaps, you let go completely. Whether the arrow finds its target is no longer your concern. Your work was in the release, not the result. Tonight, practice this radical discipline. Notice the partial feelings that grip you, the worry about being judged, the fear of failure, the need for validation. These are not commands, but weather patterns moving through the sky of consciousness. Step back with gentle compassion and observe a feeling. Not a prophecy, not a truth. Let them drift like autumn leaves on a dark river, carried by currents deeper than their restlessness. Feel your grip loosening in your jaw, your shoulders, your mind. You can care deeply about your work, your relationships, your responsibilities, while simultaneously releasing attachment to specific results. This is not apathy, but wisdom, the recognition that you control only your effort, never the outcome. Rest comes when you stop trying to write the ending before the story unfolds. The lamplight flickers against limestone walls worn smooth by centuries of solitude, casting shadows that dance like memories refusing to remain still. Musashi's weathered hand hovers above the rice paper, steady as the mountain itself, before inscribing words that carry the weight of a lifetime's accumulation of irreversible moments. Do not regret what you have done. The ink sinks into the fibers like fate itself, indelible beyond revision, demanding acceptance of what cannot be undone. Consider the mathematics of regret for a man who killed his first opponent at 13. 60 duels across 29 years mean 60 deaths, 60 men who woke expecting to see evening, whose families waited for footsteps that would never sound again. Beyond formal combat, there were the chaotic battles of civil war, the nameless casualties of a violent era, the relationships sacrificed on the altar of solitary mastery. If Musashi had allowed regret to colonize his consciousness, he would have drowned in an ocean of remorse before his 20th year. Yet he writes this precept not from callousness, but from profound understanding. Regret is a form of temporal violence, the mind's futile attempt to reach backward through time and alter what has crystallized into unchangeable history. It is the soul's most exhausting labor, trying to unwrite sentences already dried in permanent ink, to unspeak words already absorbed into another's memory, to undo actions whose consequences have rippled outward like stones thrown into still water. You know this torture intimately, don't you? You who lie there at 3 a.m, assaulted not by new threats, but by old phantoms. The argument replayed for the 1,000th time, each line re-edited in the theatre of your mind. The relationship you sabotaged, the opportunity abandoned, the words you wish you had spoken, or never spoken at all. Your mind has become an archaeological site where you endlessly excavate moments of shame, examining each artifact of failure under the harsh light of retrospective judgment. This is regret's deepest arrogance, the belief that, given who you were then, where you stood then, with the knowledge and emotional resources available then, you somehow should have acted with the wisdom you possess only now. It is like punishing a child for not knowing calculus before learning arithmetic, expecting a wounded animal to behave like one that has never known pain. Musashi understood that regret operates under a profound delusion, that self-flagellation is somehow time travel, that suffering over the past atones for it. It does not. It only exhausts you, rendering you less capable of meeting the present with grace. The mistakes you curse may have led, by obscure pathways, to the very tenderness and insight that make you capable of this reflection now. Tonight, visualize your regrets as a heavy book that has been written, bound, and placed on a high shelf. You can take it down and read it for instruction, but you cannot edit a single word. The ink is dry. The story has moved forward. That younger, more frightened, less wise version of yourself was simply trying to survive with the tools they possessed. Breathe into the clean, empty air of this present moment. Here, in this breath, there are no mistakes. The past is not a script awaiting revision, but a teacher whose lessons have already been absorbed. You are not your history, but the consciousness witnessing it, capable of choosing peace over the endless, futile trial of self-judgment. The verdict is in. You are forgiven. The day is closed. Rest now. The cave breathes with winter's rhythm, each gust of wind outside carrying the scent of approaching snow across ancient stone. Musashi's weathered hand moves across the rice paper with the precision of a man who has learned to waste neither ink nor energy on futile gestures. He inscribes another precept with the authority of someone who has witnessed jealousy transform competent swordsmen into corpses. Never be jealous. In Japanese, shito suru na, words that carry the force of survival wisdom rather than moral instruction, distilled from a lifetime of observing how envy corrupts both blade and mind. In the rigid hierarchy of feudal Japan, jealousy was not merely an uncomfortable emotion, but a tactical vulnerability that could be exploited with lethal efficiency. Picture the landscape of Musashi's era, samurai constantly measuring themselves against rivals, whose sword style was superior, whose lineage more noble, whose favor with lords more secure. Status was visible architecture, crests stitched onto garments. The quality of armor announcing one's place in an invisible ranking system. Musashi observed that the warrior consumed by envy was already defeated before drawing his sword. His attention split between his own technique and another's advantages, his focus diluted by looking sideways rather than inward. He became vulnerable to the very opponent he envied. Jealousy, Musashi understood, is spiritual poison that operates through comparison, measuring one's internal chaos against another's curated exterior. It transforms observation into obsession, assessment into self-torture, assuming that another's success diminishes your own potential. As if the universe operated on a scarcity model where glory was finite resource to be hoarded. You understand this poison more intimately than he did, don't you? You who live in an era of invisible empires built from numbers on screens, follow accounts, likes, salaries, relationship statuses. The modern world has industrialized envy, turning comparison into a daily ritual performed in the palm of your hand. With a flick of your thumb, you enter 1,000 curated lives where everyone seems more beautiful, productive, loved, certain. Your nervous system, ancient and animal, was not built for this endless measurement against millions. It evolved to compare in small groups, to ask, "Am I safe here?" Not to grade itself against an infinite parade of apparent superiority. This is the insomnia of not enough. The gnawing anxiety that keeps you scrolling, seeking, suffering in the blue glow of phantom audiences that never stop evaluating. You are comparing your behind-the-scenes footage with others' carefully edited trailers. Your rough draft to their published work. Your beginning to someone else's middle. Each comparison is a small act of self-violence, a moment where you abandon your unique path to measure yourself against someone traveling an entirely different road. But here is what jealousy obscures. You are witnessing final acts while remaining blind to rehearsals. That colleague's success came after invisible sacrifices you never witnessed. That relationship's apparent perfection conceals struggles they never posted. You are comparing your internal experience, complete with doubt and struggle, against external presentations, mistaking performance for reality. Tonight, recognize that your envy is simply misdirected admiration pointing toward what you value but have not yet claimed. Withdraw your attention from the mirage of comparison. Your bed is sanctuary from the exhausting performance of measurement. Like the flower that does not envy the tree, you are unfolding according to your own internal rhythm. Close your eyes. There is no one else to be, nowhere else to go. You are exactly where you need to be. The lamplight flickers against limestone walls as Musashi's weathered hand pauses above the rice paper, suspended in the space between intention and action. Outside the Regan cave, winter wind moves through skeletal branches with the whispered breath of something ancient and patient. Inside, there exists only the dance of flame against stone and the vast silence that Musashi has spent 60 years learning not to fear, but to inhabit. This is Ku, the void, the most profound and misunderstood teaching in his philosophy, the invisible foundation upon which all his wisdom rests. In the Book of Five Rings, Musashi devoted an entire scroll to this concept, knowing that Western minds would struggle with its paradox. The void is not emptiness as absence, but emptiness as infinite potential. The space between sword strokes where victory is born. The silence between breaths where life regenerates. The darkness before dawn where all possibilities gestate. To the untrained mind, the void appears as threatening nothingness. To the master it reveals itself as the fertile darkness from which all things emerge and to which all things return. Consider how Musashi fought, not through constant motion, but through strategic stillness punctuated by explosive precision. The space between attacks was not wasted time, but compressed potential, gathered energy waiting for the perfect moment to manifest. He discovered that true power resides not in the strike itself, but in the emptiness from which the strike emerges. Mushin, the no mind that moves faster than thought, responds before conscious planning can interfere. You understand the terror of this emptiness intimately, don't you? You who fill every silence with podcasts, every pause with scrolling, every moment of potential stillness with the anxious static of digital noise. Modern life has trained you to interpret emptiness as emergency, silence as threat, stillness as a void that must be immediately filled before it consumes you. Your nervous system, evolved for simpler times, cannot distinguish between the silence of safety and the silence of danger. This is why you dread the quiet hours before sleep, why you delay turning off the light, why you need the television's electronic murmur to drift away. You fear that in the silence you will encounter the parts of yourself you have been running from, the grief you haven't processed, the inadequacy you can't fix, the existential questions that have no comfortable answers. But what if the void you fear is actually the only place where true rest exists? Modern neuroscience confirms what Musashi understood intuitively. Your brain's default mode network, the mental activity that emerges in unstimulated awareness, is not emptiness, but the deepest form of processing. In the void, your mind integrates experience, consolidates memory, generates insight, and performs the essential maintenance that constant stimulation prevents. Like the space within a cup that makes it useful, like the silence between musical notes that gives melody meaning. The void is not lack but capacity, the openness that allows new possibilities to emerge. Tonight, let the darkness around you become not threatening but protective. A soft cocoon where transformation occurs unseen. Your bed is not a prison of insomnia, but a sanctuary floating in the vast, warm ocean of potential. Feel the space between your thoughts widening like the sky before dawn. Notice that you do not disappear into this emptiness, but become more substantial, more real, more present. The void is not your enemy, but your origin, the infinite potential from which you emerged and to which you can return for regeneration. Sink into it. Trust the silence. It is not empty, it is full of everything you need. The lamplight in the Reagan cave burns lower now, its flame thin and wavering, as though even fire grows weary of clinging to the wick. Outside, winter wind has quieted to whispered breath against ancient stone, and a profound stillness settles over the mountain like a patient shroud. Musashi sits in this gathering darkness, his weathered body a living map of 60 years spent dancing with mortality. Death approaches not as an enemy to be feared, but as an old companion finally keeping a long-postponed appointment. His brush moves across rice paper with the calm urgency of a man who has lived his entire life in death's intimate presence. From his first duel at 13, Musashi understood what most spend lifetimes avoiding. Death is not life's opposite, but its most faithful teacher. Walking beside every breath, present in every heartbeat. The silent witness that gives each moment its irreplaceable weight. For the samurai, memento mori, remember you must die, was not philosophical abstraction, but tactical necessity. The warrior who fears death hesitates, hesitation creates the opening becomes the grave. Only by accepting death completely could he paradoxically remain vibrantly alive. Each duel became a meditation on impermanence, transforming terror into clarity, anxiety into fluid responsiveness. This awareness served as the ultimate lens of discernment, slicing through illusion with surgical precision. When death sits at your shoulder, whispering that this breath might be your last, the trivial concerns that torment your sleepless mind shrink to their proper insignificance. The colleagues' disapproval, the social awkwardness, the fear of judgment, all dissolve like morning mist when measured against the vast certainty of your eventual return to cosmic darkness. You understand this terror intimately, don't you? You who lie awake at 3 a.m, suddenly aware of your own heartbeat, feeling the strange weight of consciousness trapped in flesh that will one day cease functioning. The modern world has sanitized death, hidden it behind hospital curtains and euphemisms, leaving you without cultural tools to face mortality's reality. So it visits you as faceless panic, the crushing realization of your own impermanence. The terror that time slips through your fingers like water while you remain paralyzed by anxiety rather than liberated into presence. Your fear of death is actually fear of unlived life. The dread that you will reach the end, having spent your days in the small prison of worry, rather than the vast freedom of authentic existence. You are not afraid of dying itself, but of arriving at death's door with your song still trapped inside. Your potential unrealized because you were too busy performing for audiences that never truly mattered. But here lies the profound liberation Musashi discovered. Awareness of mortality does not diminish life, but intensifies it with luminous urgency. When you truly absorb that your time is finite, that this specific arrangement of consciousness will one day dissolve back into the infinite darkness from which it emerged, suddenly the present moment becomes precious beyond measure. The deadline haunting you, the argument replaying endlessly, the milestone you haven't reached, all reveal themselves as the small anxieties of an ego that believes it has infinite time to achieve perfection. Tonight, let death be your teacher rather than your terror. Sleep is the little death, a nightly practice of letting go, of trusting that the universe continues without your anxious supervision. Feel your body against the mattress, this temporary configuration that has faithfully carried you through every experience you've known. Close your eyes and practice the warrior's ultimate discipline, releasing your grip on existence itself, discovering that in surrender comes not annihilation, but the most profound, restorative peace. The lamplight in the Reagan cave flickers against limestone walls, worn smooth by centuries of patient solitude, casting shadows that stretch and contract like the breath of the mountain itself. Outside, snow has begun to fall, not the gentle descent of celebration, but the relentless accumulation of winter's isolation. Each flake adding its silent weight to the barrier between Musashi and the distant villages where families gather around hearth fires. The air carries only the scent of pine and stone and his own quiet breath. A silence so profound it begins to sound like truth itself. He sits alone in this gathering cold, writing with the steady hand of a man who has made peace with perpetual displacement. Musashi spent his entire adult life in Mushashugi, the wandering warrior's pilgrimage, walking the length of Japan repeatedly, never remaining in one place long enough for roots to penetrate stone. From Harima to Kyoto, Osaka to Edo, Kyushu to countless forgotten crossroads, he moved like water, always flowing, never pooling. No wife to know his morning temperament, no children to carry his name beyond death. No home where walls held the accumulated memories of seasons passing. He slept beneath stars, in temples, in inns where laughter spilled from rooms he would never enter. Watching families gather around hearths while remaining forever on the threshold, never inside. This separation carried the phantom pain of connections never formed, the weight of choosing mastery over belonging. Yet even in his writings, between lines of tactical precision, pulses an unmistakable ache, not regret, but the full accounting of philosophy's price. His precept separate from attachment to residence carries not triumph, but the voice of someone who has paid the complete cost of his path and counts it even while affirming its necessity. You understand this spiritual homelessness intimately, don't you? You who lie there in the protective darkness, surrounded by the material evidence of settled life, yet feeling fundamentally unmoored, as though you inhabit your own existence as a temporary guest rather than rightful resident. The modern world promised that connection would cure this loneliness, social media to bridge distance. Endless communication to eliminate the terror of being truly alone. Yet somehow, the more connected you become, the more profound the isolation feels. This is the peculiar suffering of the sensitive soul in the digital age. You are surrounded by people, yet known by none. Visible to thousands, yet seen by few. You scroll through carefully curated lives, pressing your face to the glass of human connection. Watching tribes form around interests you almost share but never quite embody. You are the Ronin of the modern landscape, masterless, tribeless, moving through social structures like an anthropologist studying foreign cultures, performing the rituals of belonging while your oceanic heart remains unrecognized in waters too shallow to sustain its depth. But what if this sense of not belonging is not deficiency, but deeper integrity? What if your inability to settle into comfortable tribes reflects a soul too large for small categories? A consciousness that refuses to betray its complexity for the comfort of easy identification. Tonight, let your bed become the fortress of solitude you have been seeking, not a place of exile, but sanctuary where the displacement finally ends. You belong to your breath, to your heartbeat, to this precise moment. The wandering is over. You are home. The lamplight in the Reagan cave burns with diminishing intensity, its flame wavering against limestone walls as winter wind howls through mountain passes like the voices of 10,000 unanswered prayers. Outside, the storm carries the distant sound of temple bells, those bronze voices calling the faithful to prostration, promising divine intervention to those who surrender their agency to carved wood and gilded altars. Inside this sanctuary of stone and silence, Musashi sits unmoved by the tempest, his weathered hand inscribing characters that slice through centuries of spiritual dependency. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. In feudal Japan, this was a declaration of radical heresy. Temples dotted every hillside, shrines marked every crossroads, and warriors routinely paused before battle to offer coins and whispered petitions for celestial favor. To live without divine petition was to walk a terrifyingly lonely path, unprotected by the cosmic bureaucracy that supposedly governed human fate. Yet Musashi understood a profound psychological truth that modern neuroscience now confirms. The moment you outsource your salvation to external forces, you weaken your internal resolve. To pray for victory is to admit doubt in your own capacity. To wait for rescue is to remain a passenger in a vehicle driven by forces beyond your control. He did not dismiss the sacred. He bowed at shrines, respected mystery, acknowledged the vastness beyond human comprehension. But he refused to bargain with the invisible, understanding that when steel descended toward his skull, no prayer could alter its trajectory. Only his trained response, his cultivated perception, his accumulated discipline could determine whether he would see another sunset. The gods, if they existed, remained magnificently indifferent to his survival, and in this cosmic indifference he found not abandonment but profound liberation. You understand this desperate bargaining intimately, don't you? You who lie there in the protective darkness, secretly negotiating with invisible forces, the modern gods of opportunity, validation, and serendipity. You wait for the perfect job to validate your worth, the ideal relationship to cure your loneliness, the notification that signals salvation. You have spent years practicing magical thinking, collecting self-help techniques like talismans, hoping the right combination of manifestation and positive visualization will summon the rescue you crave. Meanwhile, anxiety compounds because you have made yourself a hostage to circumstances that refuse to cooperate with your petitions. This is the exhaustion of spiritual dependency, the perpetual vigil of someone expecting a savior who never arrives. You scroll through inspiration as if it were oracle, check your phone like a prayer wheel, scan the horizon for ships while your own vessel drifts aimlessly. The insomnia that plagues you is often the restlessness of waiting, the tired tension of someone who has outsourced their peace to forces that remain stubbornly silent. But here lies the liberating truth Musashi discovered in his cave of solitude. The universe is not against you because it is not about you. The stars burn with the same indifferent fire for kings and insomniacs alike. This cosmic indifference is not rejection, but release. Nothing is waiting to save you, and therefore nothing is preventing you from saving yourself. The strength you seek from external sources already resides in the simple fact of your continued existence. You have survived every difficult day you have ever faced, navigated every crisis that seemed insurmountable, adapted to losses that felt fatal. Tonight, reclaim your sovereignty from the gods of your own making. Stop waiting for permission to rest, for circumstances to align before allowing yourself peace. You are the small, steady god of your nervous system, the quiet sovereign of your inner weather. The rescue you have been praying for is simply this recognition: you are sufficient, your breath sustains you. This moment contains everything necessary. Close your eyes with the authority of Musashi laying down his brush. The help you need beats steadily in your chest. The lamplight in the Reagan cave burns with the exhaustion of a dying star, its flame now barely more than a golden whisper against limestone walls worn smooth by centuries of patient erosion. Outside, the winter storm has spent its fury and settled into the gentle rhythm of melting snow, each drop a quiet percussion marking time's relentless passage. Musashi sits in this gathering stillness, his weathered body a living testament to impermanence, joints that ache with accumulated impacts, breath that grows shallow with approaching dissolution, hands that tremble not from fear but from the simple acknowledgement that all things must pass. He has lived his entire existence in intimate relationship with Mudge, the Buddhist truth that nothing, however beautiful or terrible, remains unchanged. He had watched cherry blossoms fall in Kyoto, their beauty made luminous precisely by their brevity. Castles burned, lineages crumbled, victories faded into footnotes in forgotten scrolls. The armor that once shone beneath summer suns now rusted quietly in temple storerooms. Again and again, life revealed its single, unwavering law: everything arising must inevitably dissolve. Fear, he discovered, grows only in the cracks where we attempt to deny this fundamental truth. The swordsman who clings to life becomes hesitant. The lover who grasps security becomes suspicious. The thinker who demands certainty becomes brittle. Suffering emerges not from change itself, but from the desperate human attempt to freeze the river of time, to make permanent what is by nature transient. You understand this terror of impermanence intimately, don't you? You who lie there gripping the edges of your carefully constructed life with white-knuckled desperation, terrified of the changes approaching like winter storms on the horizon. The body aging despite your protests, relationships shifting beyond your control, certainties dissolving into questions, the future refusing to conform to blueprints drawn with anxious precision. Your insomnia is often the exhaustion of trying to hold still a world that moves with the relentless rhythm of seasons, of fighting currents that were never meant to be resisted. But here lies the profound comfort Musashi discovered in his final cave. If everything is impermanent, then suffering itself cannot last. The anxiety tormenting you tonight will dissolve like morning mist. The failure that feels eternal will fade into the vast archive of forgotten moments. Even the pain you carry, that stone in your chest, that weight on your shoulders, is simply weather passing through the vast sky of consciousness. Sleep itself is the nightly proof of impermanence, the small death you practice, the dissolution of identity, the release of control. Tonight, let impermanence be your comfort rather than your terror. Everything passes: the storm, the suffering, The sleepless night. Trust the cycle that has held you through every change, every loss, every transition. Release your grip on the riverbank. The current is gentle, and it carries all things safely home. The lamplight in the Reagan cave has diminished to its final breath, a trembling amber thread stretched between existence and void. Outside, winter's storm has exhausted itself into profound silence, leaving only the gentle percussion of melting snow against ancient stone. The world has become a study in gradations of darkness, charcoal shadows deepening to obsidian, the velvet black of space between distant stars. Musashi's weathered hand rests beside the completed manuscript, his life's final teaching dried in permanent ink. The doct is finished. 21 precepts distilled from 60 years of walking alone. There is nothing left to write, nothing left to prove, nothing left to become. You, too, have reached the end of your day's duel. Whatever battles you fought, visible or invisible, are already inscribed in the immutable stone of what has passed. Like Musashi in his cave, you sit at the threshold where effort dissolves into simple being. Your room grows dim, the outside world receding into merciful blur. You are allowed, at last, to stop holding yourself together, to release your grip on every unfinished task, every circling worry, every what-if that haunts the edges of consciousness. Feel your body sinking into the mattress as Musashi leans against cool limestone, the mountain taking his weight without question or condition. Notice the rhythm of your breath, slow, slower, each exhalation a gentle release like petals drifting to earth. The thoughts that race through your mind are becoming distant clouds moving across vast sky. Birth and death, success and failure, fear and peace, all merely weather passing through the infinite space of awareness. The boundaries begin to dissolve like ink in water. Stone and flesh, breath and silence, self and emptiness, all distinctions fade in the gathering dark. The cave breathes, the mountain breathes, you breathe. Or perhaps there is only breathing, without anyone doing it, just the gentle rise and fall, like waves folding over themselves on a dark shore, like the tide returning home to its source. The space between thoughts grows wider now, wider. Like the space between stars, dark and vast and somehow full. So full of nothing, so full of everything. Your eyelids grow heavy as the mountain settling into itself after millennia of patient standing. There is nowhere to go, nothing left to do. The old warrior lays down his brush, you lay down your vigilance, both surrendering to the darkness that was never enemy but embrace. The lamp flickers once, twice. The flame becomes smoke. The smoke becomes air. The air becomes silence. The silence becomes the vast warm ocean that holds all things. You are safe to drift now. Safe to dissolve. Safe to sleep. Darkness. Breath. Sleep.